Hello and welcome to Context. I'm Dilek Tuna. In a rare four-way online summit, President Erdogan joined US President Donald Trump, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara to discuss regional diplomacy and possibly reset years of isolation. The centerpiece, Trump's surprise decision to lift US sanctions on Syria. President Erdogan called the move historic, saying it could set an example for other countries maintaining punitive measures. Erdogan also reiterated Ankara's commitment to supporting the Damascus administration in its fight against terrorist groups, particularly Daesh. A notable shift given years of strained ties and proxy conflict. Beyond Syria, the Turkish president drew attention to Gaza, calling for immediate efforts to end the humanitarian catastrophe there. His remarks underscored Ankara's growing ambition to act as a stabilising force in multiple regional theatres. The inclusion of all four leaders signals a new diplomatic geometry in the Middle East where pragmatism seems to be overtaking polarisation. Today we explore whether this virtual summit is a turning point or just a talking point. Joining me now to discuss this further is Gustavo de Aristegui. He's a former diplomat joining us from Rabat, Morocco. Ambassador, thanks for joining the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, what does Trump's lifting of sanctions on the new Syrian government under Ahmed al-Shara signal diplomatically?
Well, it is a very important move, and this is, as you know, is a joint effort that has been happening with several countries intervening. On the one hand, the meeting between Shara and the President of the United States was a joint effort of Turkey, of the government of Turkey, and the Saudi Arabian kingdom, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But then there is a different mediation, which is also very important and needs to be stressed and underlined, and it is the mediation between the new regime in Damascus and the Israeli authorities. So this is very much a quantum leap, and it's going to be very important for the peace in the Middle East and in the future.
We've seen jubilant crowds on the streets after Trump's announcement. What areas of Syrian life have been affected by these sanctions imposed during the Assad regime?
Well, it's almost everything that you can imagine. I mean, from any kind of goods, not only technology or electronics or defense means, anything that is related to chemicals, petrochemicals, or what have you, anything that is considered as a precursor for industrial means was blocked. But it is the most troublesome of all and the most burdensome of all blockings and sanctions were the financial ones. Syria did not have access to the international banking system, was not able to use the SWIFT system that is controlled by the United States, and they were not also able to access the international financial institutions for debt restructuring or for loans of any kind. So they could only rely on their allies, the allies of the past regime, to borrow them money at very inconvenient terms, be it China or Russia. So basically, these two things are going to change entirely. Then there is the medical technology and the medical supplies that were also blocked, and there was the enormous restrictions on any person holding a Syrian passport to travel. Literally, the visas for Syrian citizens were blocked in the United States and in the Schengen area, and only asylum seekers and people that had all kinds of clearances were allowed to travel. So basically, Syria was a pariah nation. They could not do anything anywhere in the world, and this is a very big relief for their population. And I hope that once the reconstruction of the country is underway and they can reconstruct their energy infrastructure, their road infrastructure, their hospital infrastructure, rebuild the cities, there will be a massive return of a lot of talent that has left Syria. One has to understand that one of the tragedies of the massive exile of very difficult situations in the world is not only the fact that these people suffer from discrimination, from poverty, from lack of work, from lack of medical attention. A lot of them are some of the most talented people in the country. So it's a brain drain. It is a tragedy for the nation itself. They are deprived of some of their best minds and some of their best workers and some of their most audacious people.
And how might this impact US credibility after years of backing Assad's opposition?
Well, of course, Shara was part of the Assad opposition. Of course, it was part of the Assad opposition that wasn't very, let's call it, popular in the West. We know that Ahmed al-Shara was a long-time member of the Al-Qaeda network and was one of the founders of al-Nusra. But we do know that he, at a given time, not only broke up with ISIS, which was the sworn enemy of al-Nusra, as we all know, but also he distanced himself from the methods, the objectives, and the philosophy, the ideology, the radical Islamist jihadist ideology of al-Nusra. Still, of course, the people that are in his security apparatus and a lot of the fighters that took over the regime some weeks ago are people that are very close to that ideology. So right now he is very much a government that is under scrutiny. He's under surveillance. Everybody in the world is looking towards Syria to see what kind of measures are taken, what kind of attitude he has towards minorities. Of course, the assassinations of Alawites and Christians in the region of Latakia some weeks ago is a very bad sign, and they have not been thoroughly protected. Not only were they assassinated in front of their wives and children and themselves, but they were tortured, humiliated, and tramped on like insects. And this, of course, is a very bad message to the rest of the world, and the regime needs to clamp down very strongly on this kind of abuse. Of course, we're also looking towards the regional leadership of Turkey, who was one of the main allies of this regime, and Turkey needs to exercise its influence and its pressure on the regime of al-Shara to make sure that these kind of killings and abuses never happen again. And the only way to ensure credibility of this new regime and to make it a regime that is acceptable to the community of nations and to the world as a whole is that they do show restraint, seriousness, and that they do respect human rights and the rights of minorities.
Okay, so Ambassador, speaking of unpopularity, like you said in the beginning of your answer, and skepticism, Israel is very skeptical of Ahmed al-Shara and still refer to him as a jihadist. So what kind of response might we hear from them as far as Trump's decision?
Well, I did say at the beginning, there is an effort of mediation going on as we speak between the United Arab Emirates, that is being sponsored by the United Arab Emirates, between al-Shara and the State of Israel. The United Arab Emirates have fully recovered a open channel and a normal institutional relation with the State of Israel, and therefore are a very good channel to try to do that. I think that this is very good news, but of course, they need to prove that the armed forces, or what is left of the armed forces of Syria, and that the arsenals that they still have, be it fighter jets, be it missiles, be it self-propelled artillery, are not going to fall in the wrong hands, or are not going to be used to start another regional war, or are not going to be supporting other destabilizing factors in the region. Of course, we know that this regime and the groups that have backed al-Shara to take power are the antagonists of Hezbollah. But still, of course, we know that the activity of Hezbollah in Syria, there are pouches in different parts of the country, where Lebanese Hezbollah and Syrian Hezbollah, there is a Syrian Hezbollah, are very active and very powerful, where the forces of the present regime in Syria haven't been able to go in and control it. So there is a risk that Iran and its proxies reach out to their friends and allies and their proxies in the region and try to take over what is still left of the arsenal of the Syrian regime. And this could be an explosive situation for peace and stability in the region, and we could really not afford another open front. Now that finally the Lebanese front has been calmed down, not only because of the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, because there is a very serious and very competent president that has been elected in Lebanon, and that is trying to build bridges with the prime minister, who is a Sunni Muslim, as you know, and trying to build bridges with the more moderate part of the Shia establishment, especially Nabih Berri and Amal, and trying to isolate Hezbollah. And right now there is an ongoing plan in Lebanon to disarm the Palestinian factions that still are armed to their teeth in the different Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon. And there is also a very firm commitment to rebuild the strength and the might of the Lebanese armed forces so that they can take on the very complicated task of disarming Hezbollah, so that at last in Lebanon, after decades of instability and decades of civil war until 1992, at last the only armed force in the country is going to be the Lebanese army.
Mm-hmm. And could this move encourage broader Western re-engagement with the post-Assad leadership?
Yes, and yes, of course. I mean, if we pick it up where we were talking about the reestablishment of trust and confidence circle between the United States and the new regime through the mediation of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and indirectly through Israel with the United Arab Emirates, the same applies to the European Union. Let's say that the European Union was and has always been the main party concerned in this region. Let's not forget that a member of the European Union, Cyprus, is minutes away from helicopter flight from the coasts of Syria. A NATO member, Turkey, has land borders with Syria, and there's only a stone throw away from Greece, that is also a NATO and European Union member state. So it is a region of essential interest for the European Union. The European Union needs to see the firm commitment of the new Shara regime with human rights, with the security of minorities, with the fight against terrorism, be it of Iranian or Hezbollah backing, or be it of al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, or ISIS. All of these very clear messages need to be perceived by the West, need to be perceived by Europe, so that Europe can gain or regain trust and confidence in this new regime. But we need to see proof of their commitment and engagement in all of these areas.
And does recognizing al-Shara risk legitimizing a former militant group's rise to power?
I don't think so. I mean, he has also claimed that he has nothing to do with his past anymore. I mean, I am very, very reluctant myself to admit that somebody that has that kind of ideological background can shift so dramatically and so violently, I would even say, in such a short period of time. But you know, it is the only interlocutor we have. It is the only chance that we have to try to recover peace and stability in a country that has been battered and shaken not only by decades of civil war, but by decades, 54 years of one of the most ruthless dictatorships known in that region in all of its history. So right now we don't have much of an alternative. So we have to give him the benefit of the doubt, but the leash, as the American judges say when they're talking to defense lawyers, the leash is very, very short. The window of opportunity to prove that they're a serious, reliable government and regime is very, very small. They have a very short period of time to prove to the world, to prove to the US, to prove to Europe, to prove to Turkey, that is their main ally or has been the main sponsor of their victory, and to regaining power after the flight of Bashar al-Assad. They need to show the world, as I said, that they have a firm commitment with a future establishment of a full democracy with a full rule of law and the respect of the human rights that we've been talking about all along.
Mm-hmm. And how should Washington balance its re-entry into Syria with its other Middle East priorities?
Well, of course, the Middle East priorities are all, again, they're not just, you cannot piece them up. The Middle East is incredibly intricate, and it is interdependent, and it is interconnected. Anything that happens in any part of that region is going to have an immediate effect in the other side. I mean, I was as the son of an ambassador, I lived there. I was posted there for many years, and I have been following that part of the world in my career as a diplomat, and then when I was elected to parliament as spokesperson for foreign affairs. I've been there dozens of times. I've lived there. And you can be sure that in a country that has the size of Lebanon, which is 10,542 square kilometers, which is tiny. Anything that happens in any part of Lebanon is going to have a repercussion in the rest of the country. Anything that happens in Syria is going to have shockwaves affecting Jordan, Lebanon, the Palestinian territories, or Israel. Anything that happens in Egypt is going to send shockwaves across the region. And we've seen what kind of effect the instability in Iraq has provoked in countries like Syria or Jordan. So yes, it is essential that we are very, very aware that in order to achieve peace in the Middle East, all fronts need to be addressed at the same time. We cannot do a successive crisis management. First this one and then the other, and let's see if we can fix one after the other. This is not how this works. We need to stabilize all the countries at the same time. Otherwise, we are just going to be putting down the fire, diminishing the intensity of the fire, but not putting it out. And if we don't put the fire out, it's going to catch up, or it's going to reignite somewhere else in the region.
Definitely, all very intricate, as you said. What role is President Erdogan trying to claim by endorsing support for Syria's new leadership and counter-terrorism efforts?
You see, this is a very complicated question that I am not going to avoid, because quite frankly, we are all very aware of the huge importance that Turkey has in this region. It doesn't have the best history as a colonial power, and I know that I had a sort of complicated debate with a Turkish commentator in a program in your network some time back. But the truth of the matter is that the Arabs consider the Ottoman Empire as a very complicated and nasty colonial power. Then, of course, came the Europeans. So we have to be very careful, Turkish authorities and European authorities, in order not to appear as paternalistic or trying to redraw the Middle East in accordance to our interests. The Ottoman Empire is still a very fresh wound that still lives in the hearts and the souls of the people of the region. And Sykes-Picot is considered the greatest betrayal of Europe against the Middle East. So yes, it is a very delicate issue, and therefore Turkey has to balance an act that consists of three parts. One, it is its obvious interest in the region, because it has a huge land border with it. I mean, talking about Syria and Iraq. And secondly, the world is looking at how President Erdogan is managing the political situation in his country. And I think that jailing his political opponents is not the best message to send to the world. It is essential that he tries to prove that he is going to manage his own political situation, so that the way that he's going to manage the political situation in Syria and other countries of the world is going to have credibility also.
Could Ankara's alignment with Damascus signal a full policy pivot or just tactical pragmatism?
Well, I think that if there is a full shift in its strategy in the region, it's been happening for decades, not just for some years. I do think that Turkey has very legitimate interest, and those interests need to be protected and to be defended. But of course, as a member of NATO, it also has to think collectively, and it needs to think that its interest is going to affect other countries in the region and the alliance as a whole. I do believe that that Turkey needs to balance its act very carefully. It needs to understand that the world is watching, to see, as I said before, that how they are managing their internal political situation, how they intend to manage the political situation, the geostrategic situation, and the security situation in Syria. I don't think that this is merely tactical. I think that, of course, long and mid-term interests of Turkey in the region are essential, and I think that in the measure that they will be a fundamental force of stability, they're going to serve their own interests, and they're also going to serve peace and stability in the region. But this said, one needs to understand that for Turkey to be an effective peacemaker or peacekeeper in the region, they need to reach out to other parts in the region that are not as confident about the way that they have conducted themselves in the recent past and their interest. I'm talking about Egypt, I'm talking about Jordan, I'm talking about Iraq and their Kurdish minority, of course. And I am talking about the need, the essential need. I know that it's complicated to have a normalized relation with the present government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but it shouldn't be a matter of internal politics. And unfortunately, the relation between Turkey and Israel has been a matter of internal politics. It has been used as a populist tool to try to excite the bases of the party and the electors of President Erdogan. This cannot happen. The foreign policy has to be way above partisan disputes. And of course, the more delicate the situation in the region is, and the more delicate the subject that we're touching upon is, the more careful a government has to be in using it only in a stately way and in a responsible way. It should never be part of the political or partisan discussion.
Okay, Ambassador, my last question to you. In your diplomatic experience, does this summit mark a structural realignment in the Middle East politics, or is it a fleeting coordination effort?
We need to see if it's going to be effective or not. In any case, what we can say it is that it is going to become the first serious attempt to sit all the parties concerned. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a failure from the start or that it's going to be a success from the start. It is an exercise that was much needed. We can never reach any kind of agreement if we don't sit the parties together and start a discussion. But it needs also strong mediations, and Turkey alone cannot do that. Turkey has some very strong interests, and some communities in the region have a huge distrust towards Turkey and the way it has conducted itself in the last 5 to 10 years. So you need also to bear that in mind. The Alawites are not very happy. They don't see that Turkey is in any way defending their security or their lives, even, or their human rights. Let's not forget about the Shia minorities in the region. In some places, they are the majority, which is the case of Lebanon. But there's a good 13% of Shias in Syria, and they need to be assured that their safety and livelihoods are going to be respected and protected. There is no serious attempt of stabilizing the region if the minorities, including the Christians and the Alawites, are not fully protected. This summit should be a first step. It won't be the main tool to try to solve the problems of the region. They need to engage with other powers that have interests in the region, the European Union and the United States, and not think that just because they are closer to the epicenter of the problem, they have more rights or more power or more interest or have a priority in trying to set the record straight in that part of the world.
Ambassador, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for your contribution.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
A new leader in Damascus, a surprise move from Washington, and a rare alignment among rivals. But the road from sanctions to stability is never straight. Whether this summit marks the start of a new Middle East order or simply the latest in a long series of resets remains to be seen. I'm Dilek Tuna. Thanks for watching.